What if we could engineer the perfect human? Imagine a world where we can customize ourselves, choosing the traits we want in ourselves or even in future generations. Want a higher IQ? Done. Want to eliminate the risk of disease like cancer or Alzheimer's? Easy. It sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie, right? But here's the thing. Thanks to breakthroughs in genetics, this might soon be within our reach. With the discovery of CRISPR and gene editing, scientists are now capable of altering the very building blocks of our life, our DNA. It's a technology that holds the potential to not only cure genetic diseases, but also enhance human capabilities beyond what we once thought possible. Imagine a future where humans are smarter, stronger, and free from inherited illnesses. But here's the big question. Should we? In today's video, we are diving into the science behind creating the perfect human. We'll cover how our genes influence who we are, the latest tools scientists are using to tweak human DNA, and the tough ethical dilemmas that come with this power. Is perfection even possible? Should it be our goal? And what could happen if we try to control our own evolution? To understand how we might create the perfect human, we first need to grasp the basics of genetics. At the heart of everything is DNA, or deoxyribonucleic acid. This microscopic molecule is like the blueprint for building every living organism, from plants to animals, and of course humans. Think of DNA as the instruction manual that tells our bodies how to function, how to grow, and even how we look. Now, within DNA are genes, which are very specific segments that control particular traits. Eye color, hair type, height. All of these are influenced by the genes you inherit from your parents. And here's where it gets even more interesting. While you might get half of your genes from mom and half from dad, the way these genes combine is often unique, resulting in incredible variety of traits we see in humans. This combination is what makes each of us genetically distinct. But our genetic code isn't set in stone. Mutations, small changes in DNA, can occur naturally over time, leading to variations in traits. Some mutations are harmless, while others can lead to genetic disorders or diseases. On a large scale, mutations are what drive evolution, helping species to adapt to their environments over millennia. So in a way, genetic imperfections have helped humanity evolve and thrive. But why is this important for creating the perfect human? Well, if DNA is the code that defines us, then changing the code could allow us to alter who we are. Scientists have already figured out how to identify genes responsible for certain conditions, like cystic fibrosis or sickle cell anemia. But we are just scratching the surface when it comes to more complex traits like intelligence, athleticism, or even personality, which are influenced by a mix of many genes and environmental factors. This is where the potential of gene editing comes into play. If we can pinpoint the genes responsible for specific traits, could we tweak them to make people smarter, faster, or stronger, or even better? Could we eliminate genetic diseases altogether? It's a fascinating idea, but it also comes with its own set of challenges. The concept of editing our genes raises a lot of questions. While we know the basics of how genes work, the real challenge lies in their complexity. Many traits aren't controlled by just one or two genes, they result from a delicate interaction between hundreds, sometimes thousands of genes, combined with environmental influences. Trying to manipulate this intricate system is where things get complicated. Now that we understand the basics of genetics, let's dive into the tools that could potentially let us shape the perfect human. At the forefront of this revolution is a technology you've probably heard of, CRISPR. It stands for clustered, regularly interspaced, short, palindromic repeats. Yes, it's quite a mouthful, but what it really means is that scientists have discovered a precise way to edit DNA. Imagine CRISPR as a pair of molecular scissors, allowing us to cut and paste genes with incredible accuracy. It's like being able to correct a typo in a long book, except the book is our DNA, and the typo could be a disease-causing gene or an undesirable trait. This technology has already been used to modify the genes of organisms like plants and animals. But we are now at the point where it could be applied to humans. So, what exactly could we change? Well, disease prevention is one of the first and most promising applications. Scientists are working on ways to use CRISPR to edit out faulty genes responsible for inherited disease, like Huntington's or muscular dystrophy. In some cases, this could mean preventing these diseases before a person is even born, but that's just the start. Beyond preventing illnesses, gene editing opens the door to enhancing human traits. Want to boost intelligence, increase physical strength, or even alter personality traits? In theory, these are all possible by targeting the right genes. It might sound like something from a futuristic dystopian novel, but scientists are already identifying genes clusters that seem to influence these characteristics. For instance, researchers have found genes links to intelligence, though it's important to know that it's not just one gene. It's likely hundreds of genes working together, along with environmental factors that determine a person's intelligence level. To give you an idea of how far this could go, let's take a look at some real-world experiments. In 2018, a Chinese scientist made headlines for using CRISPR to edit the DNA of human embryos. He aimed to make them resistant to HIV, a bold and controversial move that led to worldwide debate. The experiment sparked outrage from scientists and ethicists, but it also highlighted just how close we are to seeing gene editing become a reality in humans. But it's not just about physical or intellectual traits. Some scientists are looking into how gene editing could influence behavior, mood, and even longevity. The idea that we could live longer, healthier lives by editing our genes is incredibly appealing, but it also brings up major ethical questions. Should we be playing God with human DNA? As powerful as CRISPR is, it's not perfect. One of the biggest concerns right now is off-targeted effects, basically unintended changes to the DNA. Think of it like trying to edit a document, but accidentally changing other parts without realizing it. These mistakes could have unforeseen consequences, leading to new health problems or mutations down the road. The technology is improving rapidly, but there's still a lot we don't know about how safe it is in the long term. That brings us to another tool in genetics toolbox, epigenetics. While CRISPR focuses on editing the genes themselves, epigenetics deals with how genes are expressed. In other words, it's not just about which genes you have, but how they are turned on or off. Scientists are discovering that by manipulating these gene switches, we could potentially enhance or suppress certain traits without changing the underlying DNA. This could offer a more subtle way to influence human traits without risking of directly altering the gene code. Now that we've explored the science behind creating the perfect human, it's time to ask the uncomfortable question. Should we do it? Just because we can edit genes doesn't mean we should. The ethics of genetic engineering open up a whole range of moral dilemmas that humanity will need to face in near future. One of the biggest concerns is inequality. If gene editing becomes a common practice, it could easily become a luxury that only the wealthy can afford. Imagine a world where the rich can pay to make their children smarter, stronger, healthier, while those without the means are left behind. This could create a new kind of social divide, one not based on income, like now, but on biological enhancement. Instead of just financial privilege, we could be dealing with a class of genetically enhanced humans, potentially creating a permanent underclass of natural humans. There's also the risk of unintended consequences. Even if we are able to edit genes to make humans healthier or more intelligent, we can't predict their long-term effects. Could altering one gene accidentally trigger health problems in the future? Would editing out certain traits reduce genetic diversity, leaving us more vulnerable to diseases or environmental changes. The complexity of the human genome means that even small changes could ripple out in ways we can fully understand. Another ethical issue revolves around the idea of designer babies. If we can choose traits like eye color, height, or even personality, where do we draw the line? What happens to the concept of human individuality when we start customizing people before they are born? There's a real danger of society placing too much value on certain traits, wherever physical beauty, intelligence, or athleticism, and undervaluing traits that make us unique. Beyond that, there's the question of genetic discrimination. If certain traits are seen as more desirable, could we start judging people based on their genetic makeup? This could lead to a dangerous precedent where people are valued not for who they are, but for their genetic profile. And then, of course, there's the fundamental question of what it means to be human. Our imperfections and genetic diversity are a big part of what makes us who we are. By striving for perfection, are we risking the very essence of humanity? These ethical debates will only get more intense as the science of gene editing advances. The big questions we need to ask ourselves is, just because we can perfect humans, should we? The idea of creating the perfect human sounds appealing, but what if it backfires? One of the first challenges is defining what perfection even means. What's considered perfect in one culture might not be seen the same way in another. For example, certain physical traits or intellectual abilities might be valued in some societies but overlooked or even discouraged in others. So, if we aim for perfection, whose standards are we following? Even more concerning is the possibility of unintended consequences. By altering our gene code, we could accidentally eliminate traits that, while seemingly undesirable, might serve a hidden purpose. Take sickle cell anemia. For instance, it's a debilitating disease, but carriers of gene also have some protections against malaria. If we were to remove the sickle cell gene from the population entirely, we might leave future generations more vulnerable to malaria in certain regions. Genetic traits often have trade-offs, and we don't yet fully understand how interconnected the genome is. There's also the issue of genetic diversity. Diversity in our genes is what has allowed humans to survive and thrive through countless environmental changes and disease outbreaks. By narrowing the gene pool in pursuit of perfection, we risk making the human population more homogeneous, and with that, more vulnerable to diseases or environmental challenges that we can't predict. Historically, populations with more genetic diversity have been more resilient. So, by creating a more perfect human, we might ironically be weakening our species in the long run. Another potential downside to striving for perfection is the loss of what makes us unique as individuals. Our imperfections, wherever they are physical, intellectual, or emotional, are part of what makes us human. By trying to standardize perfection, we could end up with a society where everyone looks and acts the same, removing the diversity of thought, creativity, and experiences that drive progress. It's our flaws, struggles, and differences that often lead to the greatest innovations and breakthroughs. And then there's psychological aspect to consider. If perfection becomes the norm, what kind of pressure will this put on the future generations? Imagine growing up in a world where anything less than perfect is seen as failure. Would we be setting impossible standards that could lead to higher rates of mental health issues, like anxiety or depression? In a world obsessed with perfection, in the end, the pursuit of perfection might sound like a solution to many of humanity's problems, but it could bring about new ones that are even harder to solve. The real question is, are we ready to face the unintended consequences of playing with human evolution? So, can we create the perfect human? With the advances in genetics and tools like CRISPR, we're closer than ever to being able to design our own traits and shape future generations. But, as we've seen, this power comes with a lot of risks, both ethical and practical. The idea of perfection is subjective, and striving for it could have serious unintended consequences, from loss of genetic diversity to social inequality, and even changes in what it means to be human. At the end of the day, it's not just about what's possible, it's about what's right. Or is the pursuit of perfection more dangerous than the flaws we're trying to fix? These are questions that scientists, ethicists, and societies around the world will need to grapple with as gene editing technology evolves. But for now, one thing is clear. Maybe the very things that make us imperfect are also what make us human. If you found this topic thought provoking, be sure to subscribe, like the video, and let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you think we should pursue genetic perfections, or are we better off embracing our flaws?